But as many as received him, verse 12, but as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name. On his name. Well, so far he's been called, in John, he's been called the Word, God, the life, and the light of men. So they need to believe on his name. Goes on to describe, which were born not of blood, nor the will of flesh, nor the will of man, but of God. If you believe in that, yes or no? Now you have to ask yourself, well, being born of God, what does being born of God mean? Does it mean you answered yes to verse 1? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Do you believe that? Yes? All right, then you're born of God. And the same was in the beginning with God. Do you believe that? Yes? Good. You're born of God. Do you believe that all things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made? Yes or no? The answer is yes. Well, then you're born of God. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. Do you believe that he's the light of men? Well, yes. Then you're born of God. And the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. The fact that his light shine on all men, and some men decide not to see it, I guess that might decide whether you're born of God or not. For remember, he came unto his own, and his own received him not. There's going to be some folks that don't receive him. People would like to make that the Israelites, the Jewish faith. And within the context of the book that we're reading in, it would be kind of silly to do that. I could see how you could get there. But it would take an awful lot of rationalizations to wrap that around that. But, you know, I'm not requiring anyone to take it as simple as I do. I just suggest you do. So, God has taken the time to light every man that comes into the world. And he came unto all of them. But some of them didn't receive that light. Verse 13, which were born not of blood, nor the will of flesh, nor the will of man, but God. Are you born not of blood, nor the will of the flesh, nor the will of man? Or do you say yes, that you believe that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God? See how important that first answer was? Yes or no? Here comes another yes or no. Verse 14. And the Word was made flesh, and dwelt among us. Now in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. If we said yes to that question, then it's pretty easy to understand what it means in verse 14. And the Word, so God, was made flesh, and dwelt among us. And we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. So do we believe that God is full of grace and truth? Yes or no? Grace and truth. Yes or no? We also have to agree that the Word was made flesh. So if God is the Word, and we've already said yes, we agree to that, you answered no, then you need to study some more. But if you said yes, that the Word was God, then quite frankly, in verse 14, and the Word was made flesh, could just as easily have been written, and God was made flesh and dwelt among us. Additionally, in verse 15, remember that man that God sent as a witness to testify? Well, in verse 15, John bare witness of him, and cried, saying, This was he of whom I spake. He that cometh after me is preferred before me, for he was before me. And of his fullness have all we received, and grace for grace. For the law was given by Moses, but grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. So now we have to make sure that we're in agreement with ourselves again. We have to be honest. So the Word was God, and God sent a man to testify of God. The fellow's name was John. And God had given true light and life. Right? In him was life, and the life was the light of men. So every man that lives has been lit by God through God's life. Some of them have received the light and understand that. They become sons of God. And then he goes on to say that God was made flesh and dwelt among us, and that the God that was made flesh and dwelt among us was full of grace and truth. So now we know that God is the light, the true light, that lit every man that comes into the world. We know that he was the life of every man in the world. We know that he was in the world and that he made the world, but yet the world didn't know him. We know that he comes on to every man, but his own didn't receive him. But we also know that as many as did receive him, he gave them power to be the sons of God, even to them believe on his name. So John bare witness in verse 15 of him, and cried, saying, This is he, was he, of whom I spake. He that come after me is preferred before me, for he was before me, and of his fullness have we all received, and grace for grace. Now hold on. John bare witness. Now his job was to bear witness to who? What was John's work? John came for a witness to bear witness of the light, that all men through him might believe. So John bare witness of who? The Word, who is God. And he cried, and he said, This was he of whom I spake. He that come after me is preferred before me, for he was before me. We know that John wasn't telling a story, because John already said in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. In the same was in the beginning with God, and all things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. And in him was life, and the life was the light of men. So John bare witness